We're talking about the holding environment this week. We're revisiting the holding environment, something that we're going to revisit again and again throughout the year together. And I see that for myself, the holding environment can be understood as a preparation for sitting practice, for meditation practice, or it can actually be seen as a fundamental aspect of the practice itself. As a psychotherapist, a clinical analogy comes to my mind when I think about this. In the world of trauma treatment, they have this term, they call it front loading. This is especially used with a form of trauma psychotherapy known as EMDR. They have this term called front loading, which is that you conceptualize the therapy process, that the first phase of the treatment is where you help a person develop resources for themselves, their ability to ground and to stabilize and to comfort and to soothe and to be present and to return to being present. And sometimes people think, but not just clients, sometimes therapists also can think, when do I get to the main part of the therapy? The part where you're processing and you're talking about the traumas themselves. And so the concept of front loading is, no, the more time and the more energy you spend on that initial phase of developing the resources, the less time and the more effective the next phase of the treatment will be when you're actually dealing in a direct, explicit way with the traumas themselves. And this might feel in the beginning like a little bit counterintuitive, like I need to get to the real stuff, the important stuff. This comes to mind when I think about the holding environment and cultivating and returning to the holding environment. We can think that when we shake out the body and when we talk about the holding environment, it's just something that we do, Bill and Suze, it's their thing. We're their students. It's the thing that Bill and Susan like to talk a lot about. And, but we're going to get to the real stuff. We're going to get to the sitting practice, This is so fundamentally part of the practice in so many fundamentally important ways. And I'd like to talk about that a little bit. So what is this holding environment? Is it a thing? What is this thing? Is it a bunch of things? How do we understand this? Just this past week, I want to share an incident that had occurred without going into the details because it's not really relevant to my point. I experienced something really upsetting with some extended family members. And I had this real complicated and heavy mix of feelings, emotions, thoughts, body sensations, all colliding very harshly, all coming together at the same time. I felt overwhelmed. I felt hurt. I felt sadness. I think more than sadness, grief. I felt surprise. And I felt this weird dichotomy where my mind was saying, what are you surprised about? Nothing is actually happening that you're not surprised, that you're surprised about. This is all actually sort of par for the course of what you expected. And at the same time, I'm feeling totally surprised in my body and taken aback. I literally had to just sit down in a quiet, dark room and do nothing. I was just temporarily incapacitated. And spontaneously, without calling it forth in any intentional way, the words holding environment came to my mind. And it reminded me to pick up my hands, place them here for a moment, and let myself settle with what does holding environment evoke for me? And this really helped ground, stabilize, calm, comfort, and soothe me. So what is this? What is this holding environment? What is this magic pill? Well, it's not a magic pill. There are some very specific qualities. There are some very specific ingredients that Bill and Susan have done a masterful job of talking about, of breaking down for us. So let's talk about them a little bit. And I also sometimes think maybe in the past, maybe in the ancient past, people were just able to plop down on their cushion and just meditate. They go from whatever they're doing in their life and just sit down. I suspect it wasn't quite so. People are people are people are people. So I don't quite know what their preparatory practices were. I remember reading when I was in high school, and I was very involved in martial arts training at that point in my life. I remember reading a legend that the martial art, the Chinese martial art of Kung Fu, was actually introduced by the Buddha when he traveled from India and he began teaching students. And he found that many of them were struggling with weakness and lethargy. So he began to teach them physical movement exercises to enable them to be more successful with their sitting practice. Now, I don't know about the accuracy and the veracity of that legend, but it does speak to this. You know, this is not just something as an aside from our practice. This is something to be seen as fundamental, something as part and parcel of our practice. Before, during, before, during, all one, all one. In Bill's book that Lori mentioned the other day, The Meditator's Dilemma, he brings down a beautiful quote, some beautiful words from Mary Oliver, right? One of the great poets, Mary Oliver. She writes like this: I understood immediately that certain things, attention, great energy, total concentration, tenderness, risk, beauty, were elements of poetry. And I understood that these elements did not grow as grass grows from a seed, naturally and unstoppably, but rather were somehow gathered and discovered by the poet and placed inside the poem. What a beautiful quote. And it isn't just true about actual poetry. We can conceptualize all of our creative endeavors as needing and relying on the same ingredients that Mary Oliver is talking about that go into a poem. We need things like attention and great energy and concentration and tenderness and risk and beauty. So Bill, in his book, he identifies them as such. And I've reordered them a little bit, specifically in the way that I personally relate with these qualities, with these aspects that we can cultivate. First, there's relaxation and ease. There's the qualities of relaxation and ease. So we talk about setting up the environment, starting with the external environment, setting up the conditions for our practice, choosing the actual place where we sit, choosing what we sit on or our other posture that we're using for practice, allowing ourselves to attend to simple things like temperature in the room, sounds, ambient sounds, maybe smell, maybe sense, maybe a blanket or a bolster, maybe an extra cushion. And then we start tending to the body itself. We talk about shaking out the body, recognizing that our body is a great storehouse and absorber. It's a great sponge of all the energy, physical and psychic energy that we're experiencing throughout our day, consciously and unconsciously. And the body is absorbing all of it at all times. Tension, caught, just stuck inside us. And we need to shake that out. We need to get moving. We need to allow the breath to have a space inside this container for some ease. The second set of qualities that I think are as fundamental as starting points as relaxation and ease are the qualities of warmth and tenderness. Lori mentioned the teaching that I had shared in the past from Ajahn Brahm about the metaphor of the kindling, of lighting the fire, right? And lighting the fire of metta. And how do we begin to cultivate a sense of warmth internally, a sense of tenderness? So we begin with setting up the conditions outside of the body, and then we set up the conditions of the body itself. And then we begin to set up the conditions, the qualities of the heart and the mind. After warmth and tenderness, we can begin to start tending to playfulness and delight. Playfulness and delight. Bill likes to say, nobody's really interested that their epitaph on their gravestone should say, here's somebody who lived their life, being a bit more mindful. Trying to become more mindful is for a goal. It's for a means to an end. What are those means? The ability to experience delightfulness. The ability to experience beauty that's inherent in any and every moment. The ability to experience play. That's not just something for children. How do we relate with that? Ajahn Brahm writes, you need happiness in your meditation practice, not only as the glue that fixes mindfulness onto its object, but also as the entertainment factor that will keep you returning to meditate. The motto of physical fitness might be no pain, no gain. But the motto of meditation is no joy, no mindfulness. No joy, no mindfulness. What a powerful statement. What a motto for our practice. We sit down and we start setting up the conditions, and we've set up the body and we've set up the environment, and now we begin to set up the internal qualities, the heart, mind, and we start saying, oh, where's the joy? Where's the warmth? Where's the play? How do I connect with these things right here, right now? Maybe yesterday it was in one way, maybe tomorrow it'll be in another way. What's it like for me right here, right now? And then there's gratitude and wonder. I think this speaks to the qualities that we talk about in mindfulness. Fresh eyes, beginner's mind, right? We can so easily get caught up in like, I know this practice, I know this thing, this is predictable, I've done this so many times before, I know what this half hour or 40 minutes of sitting will be like for me. Well, do we really? What if we suspend that belief intentionally? Yeah, I know that you think you know. I can tell myself. I know you think everything is so predictable and you're so familiar and expert with this, but what if I don't know? And what if I seek to discover right here? What will this moment be like? We can get caught up in, the instructions and the guidance that we sometimes receive for mindfulness practice in sort of a rigid mindset about it. Like, well, you've got to do this, and then I got to do that way. And if I'm going to do it right, then, this is what my mind has to do. And there's accuracy and there's truth, right? It's mindfulness practice is not just about sitting down and letting the mind go wherever it wants to go. We know that well. But without the qualities of warmth, without the qualities of wonder and gratitude, playfulness, like this is just some wild and crazy exploration I'm about to embark on, that kind of sense. We can get locked up, we can get jammed in, we can get constricted in our body, in our heart, in our mind. Lose the juice, the vitality of what this practice is all about for all of us. The way Susan sets up she talks about the steps for setting up the holding environment. She says, meet yourself where you are, right? Start by meeting yourself where you are. Every day, every moment that we come to this practice is exactly in its own way what it is, not exactly alike from any other moment. So what's it like now? And then opening up, letting go of tension, shaking out the body, allowing ourselves to have movement, particularly in the areas of the joints, the neck, the upper back, the shoulder area, places where we hold a tremendous amount of tension. Settling down, allowing ourselves to arrive, taking time for the arriving to happen. I keep on my desk and I keep on my meditation table in front of me one of those paperweights, the snow globes. When you shake it, you don't see the image. And I allow that to be the image that always comes to me is when things are swirling around and I want it to settle. just get out of the way and do nothing. Give it space, give it time, right? Really giving ourselves permission for that. I can't make myself become more ready for mindfulness. So much about this practice and skillfulness is about how to get out of our own way more than anything else. And then caringly attending in the beginning of practice and throughout the practice. What needs tending to? What needs acknowledging? What needs holding? What needs welcoming? There's always something. Yeah. And just end by sharing this beautiful poem entitled Just Being by Susan Freiburg. And if I don't remember today, I'll definitely put it in the link tomorrow. I'll try to put it in the chat. Sometimes just being needs space to relax. It needs time to pause from the pressure of living up to the duties and expectations of a rigid framework, or rest from showing up in full armor every day to protect a tender internal truth. Or sometimes just being needs to cry and feel into coarse emotions for a while. Whatever it takes for all the layers of what has built up inside, begin to unwrap the gift you truly are, deep within, just being. Okay, thank you for your attention.